Good evening. Thanks for tuning in. Without any kind of delay, this is what I accomplished during EngJam. And the rest of this video will be my EngJam Postmortem. So here is McRogueface you see in front of you. It doesn't look like much. It's still very early in development. But I think I've finally got a hang of what my Python interface is going to look like. Presently, the engine calls this REPL every time it renders a frame so I can interact with the UI elements rendering. So let's build one from Python. So first we're going to load a font object, an SFML font from file. Then I'm going to build a caption that uses that font. And the caption defaults to black, which we're on a black background, so I need to change that to some other color. And finally, to get it to draw, we need to add it to the collection of objects that the UIL or the scene draws every frame. So if I press Control D on this renderer, we should see a new UI element appeared there. And now this caption object is connected with that object in C++, and I can move it by saying, caption.x equals 150. And after I execute that, if we render another frame, the text will scoot over. So I did not do this right the first time around when I did my first two jams with McRogueface, which would be 7-Day Roguelike and Linux Game Jam, both 2023. My interface really sucked. So I started off EngJam, which is a game jam dedicated to pure engine development, and I overhauled my UI code. And I don't have my grid back for showing sprites and zooming in and doing the pan zoom on animated characters, but I'm going to build that next under this new framework and make it this easy to script new objects on the screen, new buttons, handling events. All that stuff should be in simple Python style like this. And I, could be happier. I could have done more if I would have met all my goals for the jam. But, this is a postmortem to figure out how I can get closer to that next time around. So the first thing I want to note is during EngJam, I published a lot of interviews here on my blog, kn4obl.net. That's my amateur radio call sign. I have right up the very front an interview with Dave Churchill. So if you don't know of Dave Churchill's videos, he is a university professor in Canada, and all of his lectures on game development, game AI, and just plain artificial intelligence go up on YouTube every semester as he teaches them. He streams them live to Twitch as in parallel with his actual required classes for his students to take. So I followed followed his course Comp 4300 to build the game engine in SFML, which is what McRogueface is based on. So that's probably my most treasured interview this time around, but there are many interviews now. And I interviewed JT Stefano, who's a random Redditor who wrote a graphics engine, and that's not like McRogueface. That's not a goofy little rendering engine. This is actual real-time 3D rendering at high definition, and I'm definitely going to look at his work, which is all open source, when I go to make the leap into 3D myself. I got Dane from Noya Dev, also known as Splosions. He did not write his own engine, but I still wanted the input of people who weren't writing their own engines and help engine developers make that same kind of judgment for themselves, whether they need one or not. I got Mike, a friend from Discord, to talk about his experience developing Blood Dome 99, which is live on Steam right now. They have a new season that just came up with new features for their roguelike action shooter type game with randomized upgrades. It's pretty interesting. Octoshrimpy, that's another friend from Discord, and his pixel art is incredible. You should join us on Very Epic Tavern if you want to chat with some really skilled pixel artists. And Jason Roberts, who is the developer of Empires of Aradia, Cataclysm of Chaos. Really devoted developer, really incredible tool set, and he was patching TCOD to make it more capable for his game's requirements before the Python 3 TCOD version was even available. So I made good friends doing these interviews. I'm happy to have met all of those people. I think all of them had something to teach me. And I probably should also mention the video interview I did with Action Jake, who is, again, another YouTuber, was willing to get on camera with me, and we had an absolute blast chatting for an hour about the industry and our hobbies making games. So all of these people, I'm extremely grateful for their input. I will say that as the operator of EngJam, doing these interviews and publishing them cost me precious time that I was otherwise going to be able to use on my engine. So next time, maybe I will try to be a participant and not a manager, but I threw the event for myself. I was the only real participant, so I don't really have a choice in that. Maybe I just won't go so hard on interviewing people next time around. The next thing is a look at my schedule, how I did. So here's the schedule, and I will say that I started off with having to write some articles to publish those interviews, and then I went to work for a week. And I want to highlight the weekend here, because when I originally wrote my schedule, I decided that this working week, where I was going to have 3 evening streams, was going to be Sprint 1, where I tried to overhaul the UI. Well, Friday night, I started hitting the inevitable seg faults of my UI overhaul, and really it took the wind out of my sails. It beat me up all weekend. I was fighting with getting the Python code to compile correctly and run without making seg faults. So that was not easy, but it was very necessary for the development of my engine. So I did get through those. I canceled the Saturday and Sunday streams just to give my wife a little bit of a break from my intense streaming schedule, and also give my brain a break from this seemingly intractable problem. I did not stream on Monday, but I did start publishing the rest of the interviews. I got the rest of them out the first day of my vacation, which was supposed to be Sprint 3. By this point of the jam, any notion of Sprint 1, 2, and 3 had been thrown out the window, because most of what I accomplished I had originally scheduled for this initial week. But simply put, I had a learning curve with the Python integration that I wasn't going to get out of just by trying to rush. It was time well spent, even if I do think that I kind of did not accomplish everything on my feature list. So I wanted to pull up these 2 roadmap docs. On the left here, I have what I drew up as a concept of what I was going to do during the jam, and this kind of transformed a little bit. I did end up making the widget hierarchy. I did not spend any time at all on these sort of advanced or composite UI elements. I still want to go and make those. I have an idea for a template system so that we can make things like an OK or cancel box, or a OK only notification box, or a text box with a slider. But I need to do some more work. I need to change some rendering capabilities to make that possible. But it's not the highest priority. And also, I am putting a big emphasis on accessibility in my engine. I really want to make Rogueface usable with only a keyboard, with only a mouse, or even with different input methods, like with only blinking your eyes, or with only voice commands, or with only a text-based screen reader. And I think to do that, I need to implement these sort of, you might call it like Section 508 type stuff. But the way I really want to implement it is by making all the controls that are built in the UI accessible through the Python interface. And then from there, you can make a text-based or maybe a REST API or any kind of command system you want would be able to interact with any part of the UI. So that's still on my roadmap, but it's not the next priority. I need to get a few more things working just to keep McRogueface operating. And then, of course, all these same bugs and nice to haves did not even get touched during the jam. So they ended up on this longer roadmap here on the right, yet to come. So for the post-jam roadmap, I have kept working on some things. The demo I gave at the beginning of this was not ready on the midnight submission of the jam. But I'm going to work on textures next so that I can do the same kind of font management in Python. I can do that with texture and sprite maps, stuff of that nature, and get the sprites all working. Basically, what I need to work towards to get this UI stuff completed is to rebuild the functionality from my other game jams. I feel like I was kind of stubbing it or almost like faking it with those input systems because the API methods were really messy. You had to like know the index of things that you were going back and modifying. So it was really impossible to, in a Pythonic way, build and modify interfaces or on-screen items. So now that the API interface has been overhauled, I feel like I can build better from here and make that stuff actually good and scriptable. What else? As soon as I'm done with all this stuff, which is essentially the Python API overhaul, just getting my legs under me running Python inside of my engine, I'm going to build the roguelike tutorial for EngJam. And what that'll mean is I can get a website up that includes a 10 to 15 step tutorial that you can download McRogueface, load in a sprite sheet, program your enemies in your dungeon generator, and deploy a standalone executable game to Windows and Linux. I can support. I really want to support Mac, but I need to borrow some Macs to get that, especially with the Intel versus Apple Silicon, the different architectures of Mac. I would love to support that, but I don't know anything about it, so I'll need help building for those other platforms. But then other basic stuff that TCOD doesn't have to deal with. So if you don't know TCOD, that is a roguelike engine that kind of operates with less of a sprite sheet and more of a modified ASCII font. And it may have some stuff like resolution in terms of like a terminal, like 80 by 25 would be a basic terminal. Maybe you get more rows and columns when you make it full screen. Maybe it just draws the boxes bigger. So I have a completely different set of problems with that because McRogueface is drawn with SFML and I have sprites. And I like that zoomed in pixelated look for the sprites, but I don't want the text to look tiny. I don't want the UI elements to all be bunched up in a corner because the resolution wasn't known at the time you drew up your UI. So I need to work on those things to make it more compatible. Basically, if you maximize the game, I would like it to all get bigger, but maybe not just get bigger. Like if your inventory window has more space, maybe the icons do get bigger, but maybe it also shows more of them. And that's complicated stuff that there are solutions for in how web pages are written. But, you know, I'll have to work that out, and I'll probably leave it a little bit unfinished, at least while I'm working on this tutorial. But that's the next goal. And then finally, stuff like the sizzle reel. I really want to get to differentiating McRogueface from other existing engines, I really want to lean on the Python integration. There's tons of great Python libraries for plotting data, for data science, for accessing APIs. So, you know, maybe you make a McRogueface map and it has like buttons on the ground, and when you press those buttons, it like turns the lights on in your house. I could definitely do that with a Python API. So you can plug stuff like that into a game, and those abilities just naturally come from embedding Python. So I need to demo all that and show how to use McRogueface as a standalone Python. Because what's really nice about how I've set up the engine so far is that once you build it, you don't have to ship anything else. You don't need Python installed on your system. Python is built into the McRogueface executable. So if you zip up the output from the compiler, that's ready to go on any other computer of the same operating system. So, and continue to work on stuff like accessibility. I'm just a fan of it. I like having the option to access this, and I would love to work with people who have a more difficult time using a computer and make sure that this sort of stuff is accessible. I don't know that there's a lot of games for people that are like operating a mouse cursor with a bite stick. You know, that's something that could really, I think, humanize and help those people out to have, accessible games for them to play. And research stuff, because once you plug it into Python, of course, all of the machine learning and AI world is opened up to you to tinker around with. And of course, I've got some dreams and game concepts after that, but let's not go any further into it. Let's call that a day. So, bottom line is I had a great time and found my limitations and learned a lot during EngJam, and I recommend anyone who wants to do the same to sign up next year. I'll be doing it again. Stay out of trouble. See you next time.